I got a new light.
Actually, I got to turn on my lights because you can't.
Oh, you already have one? Can't hear you. Hold on.
You can't hear me? I can't hear you now. Dave, I can't hear you. You were there a second ago.
Oh, geez.
Now I hear you. I hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Looks like there's D.
There he is. Nice.
You're gonna be a rapper D. Let's see.
All right.
Can I share my screen? Nope.
You want to test it out?
Yeah. You ready?
There you go. Try that.
I feel like I'm really dark. Let's see if I can. Okay, let me try it right now. Oops. I don't know what I just did.
Howard.
Here we go. Yeah, I can do it. Okay, it's
All
good.
right, so we're going to have to see in the attendees section if anybody signs in that's supposed to be a panelist, and then we'll have to figure out how to move them over. I'm imagining.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, we're counting on the young guy.
The young guy.
Howard, how are you?
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can see you. And
We
you're
can see you now.
I'm sorry.
beautiful.
My apologies.
Looking lovely as ever, Howard.
Who is this speaking? I can't see the,
Oh, you
It's
can't see
Dave.
it. It's your biggest fan, the town manager.
that would be my wife. Hi, Sean.
Hey, how are you?
Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Howard. Hey,
I'm sorry that we can't do this all over a beer.
yeah, that I had half a beer, I'll admit earlier.
Well, I have to admit I had a shot at a beer.
I see Pat Townsley is with us. He wishes he could supply us a beer, but unfortunately he's unable to.
Well, we've just been talking about Pat. He's just, he's doing an amazing job.
No question about it.
How is everyone's family?
Good.
Good. Yeah. How about yours?
Wonderful.
Good.
Hey, Howard.
Is that Kelly?
That's Kelly.
That's Kelly.
Hello, my dear, our dear.
I was caught up making risotto, and all of a sudden I looked at the time. I went, "Oh my god!"
I'm coming over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess
What kind of risotto?
I'm gonna have to wait.
What kind did you make?
I made a fresh cranberry bean with greens and
Yum.
yeah, it's good.
Excuse me.
Right.
How are you, Rich?
I'm good. How about you? Busy. I don't like being this busy.
Yeah, it is busy.
We're supposed to
It's COVID busy, it's called.
Hey, Rich.
be hunkering down, and it's not happening.
Mm.
How come everyone looks the same and I'm getting older?
Hello there.
Hi, Nodder.
Nader. Good evening. Very good. Thank you. How's everyone?
Good.
Good.
Nodder is our bridge engineer.
Okay.
Huh?
Take care.
Hello there.
A bridge too far. Is that, sorry.
It's pretty close to the town hall in this case.
It's great to hold these in the evenings because I turn the lights down and I look much more presentable than in reality. There she is.
Take care.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Good.
Been a
Good.
long time, Carrie.
I know. How are you, Howard?
We've missed you guys.
I know. We have to meet for coffee downtown. Distance, of course.
In the comments.
Yeah, that would be fun.
For an interim move, Sean, that has really become the spot in town.
Yes, it has, hasn't it? It's going to be hard taking it away. It's going to be like prying candy from a baby's hands.
Totally.
Well, that just supports our initial thoughts and concepts for commons there, even if it won't be the same size or configuration, but it's really a magnet. It's wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Morning, noon, and night it's used, and that'll be one of my comments tonight. Later on, I'll talk about when I'm going over the PowerPoint.
I know it's kind of distracting. Anytime you drive by it, there's people there.
I've enjoyed it quite a few times myself.
Yeah. Good.
Even a few people who spoke out against it, I've seen them there a lot. So.
Well,
That's funny.
it's really quite extraordinary in all the years of my career and practice to have something not constructed, but existing that shows you at least a part of what will be,
Yeah.
rather than a sketch or a drawing or an animation.
Yeah.
It's reality.
Yeah.
I know, because people aren't very good at visualizing, so it actually gives them a bridge towards that.
I always saw it.
Ah,
but I can see stuff like that. So.
yeah, exactly.
Well, and also just how many more people are using the park in general?
Well,
I mean, at one point there was more people using the park for music and, you know, a non-published music, you know, in the park than there were during, you know, any of
Indeed.
the events that we had done for the Arts Commission
No.
outside of the Beatles.
And it just shows you, for example, the picnic tables and benches that were there from the original design are being used.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're in the shade. They're great.
But the important thing is that it's safe and secure, and the police can see into the space. It's a defensible space, as we used to call it. It's perfect.
No, there's so many more women in that park now.
Good point. Great point.
Yeah.
Oh, John Wright.
Okay, it may be one of your last views, Howard. So do a screenshot.
No, I will. We will see you guys every day.
That, in your case, that's true.
So I think Kelly, we can probably get going in the interest of time. We have a lot of visitors as attendees. So
Okay.
Is Brian here?
I'm just texting. I think he's going to jump on. He had web issues. He's logging on now.
I guess we're expecting Matt Smeltzer as well.
I
Matt
see
here.
Matt's here.
Matt here.
Oh,
We have other members of the CAC that are going to be joining, but I think they'll just come on as they do well. So
That
Okay.
sounds great.
Hey, sorry, Dave. I was having web issues. all day.
Okay, no, I think we're ready to go, and I'll turn it over to the chair.
okay, so my name is Kelly Warner. I'm going to call to order the meeting for Reimagine Creek Park Community Advisory Committee. And in accordance with shelter-in-place orders, the town is not offering in-person meeting location, so the meeting is being conducted via Zoom. And you know, it's kind of a brief agenda, but doesn't mean that it's going to be a short meeting necessarily. We have space for people now, open time for public expression. So I would just ask anyone that, I guess they raise a hand, right, Dave, for us to call on them?
Yep.
And each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. And I just ask for you to be succinct so we can get on with the business at hand.
The only thing I'd add, Kelly, is that it's 3 minutes just for anyone to speak about something that's not on tonight's agenda, which is Reimagine Creek Park. That's it. That's the only thing I'd add.
Well, we'll also take public comment during those items as well.
Okay, yeah, so if people think they may have questions, they may want to hold off speaking in the beginning, but anyway, so I guess are you seeing any hands raised, Dave, or whoever's?
No hands raised.
Okay. All right, so if there's no hands raised, then we're going to move ahead with the next part of the agenda, which is the update on Reimagine Creek Park. And the first part is an update on the San Anselmo Flood Risk Reduction Project. And
I'm going to, excuse me,
Brian,
Kelly, I'm going to level set on that, okay? Just,
yes.
all right. So for those of you that don't remember or haven't attended any of our previous public meetings or council meetings, I'm just going to sort of bring us quickly up to date to how we got here. So just to level set, this is a county-led flood mitigation project. It's county-led because it's multi-jurisdictional. San Anselmo's partnering with our upstream and our downstream partners. This is a project that has been in the works for a long time. And what happened is that a group of community members just said, hey, look, if in fact we're going to have this flood mitigation problem, let's engage in a community process so it can reflect the needs and desires of the community. So we had a community process all last spring. Number of public meetings came to council. We brought forth a design that was vetted through the CAC, accepted by council. And then just to reiterate, as was said at the time, the design, as all things, are subject to the constraints of the flood project, which is the guiding light. So we're here now for the following reasons. One is a question of timing. As we've been consistently stating since we began this, the Board of Supervisors will be making a decision in January. And if we do not meet their schedule, they will move ahead. And the flood mitigation will not reflect the community design and desires that we have done. So at this point, Sean, I'm about to turn it over to Sean, but I want to keep just a couple things in mind. Since the advent of the design, we had COVID and the shelter in place. So ultimately, under the initial schedule, we should have been done by now. But because of the shelter in place, it actually gave us an opportunity to move quickly and nimbly. And I'll give all the credit to Sean, his team, and to Dave to take advantage of the interim step and take down the building and keep up the foundation. Taking down the building during the shelter in place allowed us to minimize the disruptions of the building and allowed us also to provide a proof of concept. And what we found is that, as we had suspected, the community was incredibly receptive to the gathering space. So what Sean is going to talk about is the iteration from the previous design, the flood mitigation concerns, and the fact that RHAA, the design firm, was actually able to see how the space was being used real time and integrate that into these designs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean. Thanks, Kelly.
Can I just interrupt one thing? Can everybody else mute who's on the CAC or on the meeting, and just whoever's speaking unmute? That'll limit any other extra noise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Go to full screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So before I get started, I just want to say that, you know, I've been working with RHAA, working with the county, working with our bridge engineer, Nader Tamane, who we have here, also with Matt Smelter, who represents both the county and the town as part of this project. And so it's been a lot of different moving parts trying to get everything in place, but this started with the original RHAA concept, and we've kind of been trying to morph that into something that works, as Brian was saying, with flood control, with the RHAA concept, but also with the public right-of-way. And so one of the things I'm going to show you some different design ideas. Really, the most important thing that I'm trying to get out of tonight's meeting, you know, we can definitely go forward with one of these designs, but for the county and timing, the most important thing is going to be, well, where do we want the flood wall if we have to have a flood wall? And so that's what I'm going to be showing you, like 3 different options with the flood wall and then also landscaping, and we can talk about all of those. With that, I will get started. So option 1, which RHA is calling wrapped walls. Right here, you can see, and I'm going to have to show you better renderings of these. I know these are quite small probably for you to see, but the flood wall is actually back behind the sidewalk, kind of in the middle, if you got, everybody knows, of the concrete area out there. And that's the blue line right here. Let's see if I can actually annotate this. The blue line right here is where the flood wall is right now. And hopefully I can clear this. Yeah, it looks like I can do that. Okay, so that blue line right there is where the flood wall is. And then over here, where the red line is actually where the retaining wall is. And then you see the gray area is a potential location of the bridge, and that could shift to the left or the right, more or less. And now I'm going to just keep going through the slides. Let's see. Now it's not working. Clear.
Sean, just may I ask a point of clarification? When you describe it as a flood wall, can you describe what that means and how high that wall is
Yep.
from, say, the existing sidewalk?
Yeah, so let me get into the slides a little bit more and I'll answer that question, okay?
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
No, it's fine. It's a really good question. Now I can't, oh, there we go. I couldn't get it to work. There we go. Okay. So right here, this is just actually an idea of some benches that you would have if we built this plaza. And here, this kind of jumps into the option 1 rendering. And as you can see right now, the flood wall, which would be about 4 feet high, is pretty much almost right behind the existing sidewalk. So that sidewalk you see there is pretty much the existing sidewalk. You have landscaping here, some trees, and then you have benches in here. This flood wall, and I'm going to go backwards in a minute, actually requires floodgates in a number of areas. One right here in front of the bridge where you see the benches on over here, and then more floodgates further downstream. So I'm going to go backwards. So you would actually have to have floodgates in like a number of locations here, here, and here. And so you'd have a lot of different floodgates to actually make this waterproof if you had a flood wall. Clear all drawings. There we go. That worked. Look at that. I'm getting better with this. Then.
And Sean, Sean, the flood wall, as I understand it, because this goes back a number of years, is to contain the maximum floodwaters from going into San Anselmo Avenue. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's a barrier.
So if you want me to, I can go really way back. But yeah, so the flood wall.
No, that's.
I can talk about the flood project if you want me to. So
that's okay.
Going back into the San Anselmo Flood Risk Reduction Project, yeah, it's to contain the 100-year flood in theory, based upon modeling. And so the flood wall is actually at the base flood elevation of, I think it's like 50 feet or 51 feet, somewhere around there, and Scott can chime in if he wants. And so the idea would be that, you know, when they remove building bridge 2, which blocks the flow of water and causes about 400 plus or minus other buildings to have higher floodwaters, that more water would be in the creek, but you would have this flood wall in theory to contain the 100-year flood. But there are some other issues with that, which I'm not going to get into here. Like I said, I really want to kind of focus on the plaza and where the flood wall is. You can also see in the background here, you see there's a guardrail that's open. That was always the idea that RHAA was looking for, was this open guardrail so you could see the creek.
Exactly.
And if I go to the backside, this is one idea where you're looking at it from the Creek Park side where the redwood trees and tables are, the old tables are back there. And you can see right here, we even show it being clad in stone, which is a potential option. You know, all of these are just ideas. And at the end of the day, how much money we can get for this project will determine what we can or can't do. And then going into option 2, it's called the stone wall. But the really big difference with this is the flood wall is actually been moved way out to the middle of the parking spaces, where I'm circling it in blue right now. And so it's been stepped back. And what that does, and I'll show you in a minute, it actually reduces the height of the flood wall and creates more plaza space. And so that's really what we're looking at, is do we want to try to create a bigger plaza with this? And I'm going to step you through this. And then with this one, we'd actually have floodgates only at the end that would tie into other flood walls at both ends. And once again, the bridge is right here, but that could be shifted over closer to the building. There's various ways of doing it. And then the retaining wall, this red line right here, that retaining wall is right at the creek.
Are you able to enlarge that, Sean, so we can see the plan?
See. You know, I'm going to try to do this. If I might have to escape and go into. Hold on, come on. Okay, so let me clear. I'm going to clear the blue line. I'm going to zoom in.
So this is option 2.
Yeah, and they're similar except for the location, Howard, of the flood wall. So this is the bridge right here. Can you guys see my cursor?
Yes.
So that's the bridge. And then the red line is the retaining wall or abutment for the bridge that is at the creek. And then the blue line out here is the flood wall. And then you put floodgates on the end. And I'll show another rendering for this. So the whole idea is shifting the flood wall from before it was behind the sidewalk. Now it's actually out in front and in the street, creating more plaza area. And
Hey, Sean, really quick, sorry to butt in, but from the red line to the blue line, I can't see that. How many feet is that?
I think it's about 15 or 20, depends. Yeah, it's somewhere around there, something like that. It's about 15 or 20 feet.
So in the maximum flood event, God forbid that happens again, when you put the barriers in on either end, the water could come through the open fence line, or I guess it's a fence or railing, sorry, at the red line, and it could flood up to the flood wall, which is the blue line.
Correct. In theory, if that's where the water was coming from, but there's other questions about that. So that's correct.
So if I understand it, the blue line as shown here, or in option 1, would be approximately 4 feet high from the existing sidewalk grade. So that if you were in a car, you could not see into the plaza as you can now, because you would have that solid wall.
Actually, the opposite is true. Because we're shifting that blue line out, the flood wall goes from about 4 feet down to about 3 or 3.5, because the grade is higher. And so actually, if you're in any normal car, usually you're about 3 feet high, your window, right? Or more. You'll actually be able to see it, and you'll see that in the next few renderings. So let me go.
Sean, in normal times, when there's no flooding going on, these two abutment, what you call removable abutments, they open up and that becomes the sidewalk. Okay, I see.
Yes, and actually I can zoom in now to answer. I think it was Jason who asked the question about the distance here. Let me just do this for you guys. So it looks like you've got 7 plus 5 is 12. It looks like about 18 feet there.
So and in each of these options, are you going out to the street side edge of the existing parking spaces?
So no. So option 1, once again, the flood wall, and I'll go backwards, is behind the sidewalk. Option 2, the flood wall is moved into the parking spaces. So if I go to the next rendering, you'll see that, oops. I don't know what it's doing now. It won't let me, okay. So this is actually, let me just show you this really quick. These are just some ideas on, bench styles here. You can all see those.
Which is extremely cool. If I'm to understand these options, which is one I was going to ask about, is there a way to convert what is just an engineered concrete wall that can be stone faced, of course, and you can do things, but can the wall be morphed into a bench or a seating element that is, as you see here, so that it acts as a wall, but it doesn't appear to be just a flood wall. It's more of an element that provides seating on either side. It looks like that is possible.
Yeah, as we go into the other slides, you'll see exactly that.
So even though from the county side, they would pay for the wall, et cetera, they would build that, but it looks like we might be able to ameliorate, or whatever the word is, to convert what is an engineered wall that we need to a design element that could be a series of platform seats, et cetera. That would be very interesting, just as an aside.
Yes.
But how aren't you talking about then moving those benches out to where that wall is shown right now?
Well, if it turns into a bench element, it really could be a signature. And to me, then the wall could be placed anywhere, because the further in that you go to the creek, the higher the wall. But it wouldn't appear as shown in this drawing. The wall is the core of what becomes a seating or design element. And I think that is very interesting.
Yes, so if you look at the wall, Howard, on the right, it's a stone wall, but what Scott and I were talking about is exactly what you're saying, is you could actually take sections and have landscaping, but other sections and have benches built into it, right? That are hanging
Exactly.
off the wall. But right now what you see here, I mean, this is, RHAA showed this, but one of the things I asked them, but I think it was just a matter of timing. Imagine if that middle, see where the benches are now?
Yes,
And if I go to the next slide, they turn into more flat benches, right? Well,
correct.
you could also get rid of all those benches and maybe do exactly what we have now, have picnic tables scattered throughout there. Because it seems like there's a real need and want for that. Now we could have benches on the bridge and benches, we could still have picnic tables and then benches built into the wall, as you're saying, and then have picnic tables in the middle. What really this gives us by shifting if you look at the stone wall on the right, that is now on the opposite side of the sidewalk. And I'll be able to show you guys these on a final slide from the option one. And so really what we're trying to ask the committee tonight is, do we want to try to maximize the size of the plaza, and whether or not the wall is concrete or stone, we can come out in the wash. Really for the county, if we're going to move forward with this flood wall, want to know where that flood wall is, and are we going to have an open guardrail and all these other iterations that we're talking about. We still need to work with RHAA. We still need to work with Notter Tomine for the bridge design, but these are just giving us different ideas. And like you said, we could have benches, we could have tables. So this is the back side of option two. You can see the benches across the creek.
Yes.
You can see the bridge on the other side, which I think, if I go backwards, let me just go backwards for a second. This one of the big differences in here, if I could walk your way through this, is you see the bench now is on the back side of the bridge, overlooking the creek, as opposed to the option one, the bench had it right up against the water.
Could you click back and forth a couple of times, Sean?
Yeah, I can do
One
that.
and two.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me see if I can clear this. Clear all drawings. Okay, I did that.
What I'm looking for is this one has the performance platform or the stage. Is the other one doing the same thing?
Yeah,
One.
the performance platform is really something that we still need to work on. I don't know why hold on. So the performance platform, here we go. So it's still there, right there. That's option one. But you see over here, you got the benches are up against the water right here, right? And the flood wall is more in the middle.
Right.
And I'll show you another person. So let's keep going. And I can come back to all of these.
I wanted to ask one more point, and perhaps Nadir can jump in. Is there a constraint as far as how far east the plaza platform can go? I assume there's a retaining wall under the platform. Can the deck, the plaza, be increased even more to cantilever over that wall?
So originally, right now, the gray area is a bridge, right?
Yes.
And it's about 16 feet wide. Originally, we had a wedge structure there, and we removed it for a couple reasons. One, we were going back and forth with the county on the retaining wall, the red line, which actually becomes an abutment in terms of what an abutment is versus a retaining wall. So that was one thing that we were going back and forth on. So we ended up kind of more making the bridge rectangular, but also from an environmental standpoint, we thought that the less we cover the creek, the more that the environmental people like it. But we could take that bridge and shift it up against the building or make it a little bit wider. So yes, you can shift it over. I can tell you that Notter, and he could chime in if he wants, would say it's probably easier the way it's shown, but we could shift it over.
Well, I appreciate that response, but my question is where the red line is. I assume there's an abutment under that platform at that point, a retaining wall or abutment.
Yeah.
Can the deck, without impeding the flood flow, can the deck cantilever over that wall or abutment so that the plaza is even larger, even though at a maximum flood event, that would be under the water.
So which way are you talking? I guess I'm not understanding which way you're talking about.
So you have a red line, which is the edge of the deck where there would be an open the railing. Our preference, and I'm saying that editorially for the CAC, is to create a piazza, a plaza. That was always the intent going back. Gosh, I'm sorry, Dave, to even say this. I think I've got 1,015 emails going back now over 2 years. But anyway, aside from that, would be to enlarge the plaza. Can we cantilever
No.
the
I can answer that
plaza
right
over?
now.
Okay, that
Yeah,
was a simple
I
answer.
just want to weigh in for a second. Is that we should just all keep in mind that Sean has been working tirelessly, and on
indeed.
a certain level, we have just sort of constraints that we have to have environmental and flood wise. Correct, Sean?
Yeah. So we can't
Understood.
cantilever because of flood reasons. We actually need to
Got
be
it.
back against that wall so that the creek can rise. And basically, if you're doing that, you'd be creating another impediment. Even just having the bridge, we're having to be really careful to lift the bridge up and have it at a certain height to get over that. So
Okay, I understand. So the corollary would be then, can we add steps to raise the level of the platform?
we can, but just so you know, we were looking at this for quite some time, Howard.
Oh, indeed. I
From
know,
an
Sean.
engineering and an architectural perspective, and the steps are getting very complicated in terms of how to tie it into the bridge, and then also raising up in the floodplain. And so, like the idea behind this right now is giving us a broader, flatter plaza to work in, so you can use it somewhat like we have now, right, with tables out there and chairs, and not break it up so much. And also we were having some issues with ADA in terms of how it transitions to the bridge and giving full access to everybody to all parts. So,
Okay.
so we did look at that.
I did have to ask that, so it clarifies it for everyone else on the CAC.
Okay, yeah, it's a good question. Let's see. Now let me
I
see.
have a real quick question, Jason here.
Yes.
So is there any reason politically or environmentally or from the town that those parking spaces will be an issue if we were to move it out there?
No.
Very good question.
So there's actually only most of that is actually a driveway right now, number one. So there's actually no parking. Anytime you remove parking, though, the businesses don't like it, typically speaking, but there's really only 2 spaces there.
There are only 2, correct.
Yes. And so we don't see any issues. I mean, obviously we're losing a couple parking spaces, so that could be an issue, but we've done a parking study. And as we said, there is lots of parking, in the parking lots. There's lots of there's, I think, 50 to 100 spaces on San Rafael Avenue around the corner. So parking shouldn't be an issue. And as we've seen, there's been a great need for a public space downtown. So the idea is to capitalize on this and make that plaza bigger.
Agreed.
Right,
Yeah.
right, as big as it can be.
Yeah, and that's what moving the flood wall out does. And so let me go to option 3, which option 2 and 3 are really the same thing. So once again, you've got your flood wall out in the middle of the parking spaces, which is this blue line right here. And then you would have floodgates at the ends. There's your bridge, and you could look at shifting it over closer to the building, as I stated. And this is just a top view, but I'm going to kind of go quickly to the side view. And there's some more bench ideas.
Right.
And then, so this is a similar option to the one we just saw, but a different bench setup with the flood wall, which is the stone clad wall in the middle right there of the parking. So where that green you see on the left and right of the stone wall, that's actually where cars parked or where the driveway was, right? And so we're picking up quite a lot of space. I mean, what I showed you is about 18 feet in the middle, but down towards Michael Feldman's The Art Studio. It's going to get a lot wider in there because of the way the creek goes. And once again, this shows you the open railing. And then there's like stone clad benches. You can see that.
But
then
well, to follow up on Jason's comment or question, it seems to me that our objective is to make or to create the largest piazza plaza that we can. And if we cannot overhang the abutment or the retaining wall going east into the park, then for me, and perhaps for some of us, the larger that we can make the plaza, that's what we should be thinking about. And that would include, I think, capturing those parking spaces. So the parking spaces could become what we are now calling parklets. So we capture the street. Our concept originally was to have the street, the pavement for the plaza carry out across the street so that the cars go into a pedestrian space, not unlike you find in Europe. It's a piazza with the bollards, etc. But the opportunity here is quite extraordinary. The bench or the bench element, which is really the wall, becomes a sculptural element along the street. And it's not a wall, it's not just a bench as is shown in option 2, it's more of the sculptural thing that you were showing on some of your other images, where it's a series of platforms and it really hides or obscures the flood wall. But it's something that is so unique when you're driving through that piazza, that paved area, which is going across the street, even though it's still street, but it's the same pavement that you have in the plaza, if you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, and
that's doable.
It's very doable. And to add to that, if you have the flood wall in the parking spaces, like we said earlier, it'll actually drop the height down and you'll be able to see over it driving by. You also, if you put landscaping both in front of it and behind it we can have landscaping and benches.
Or even
okay, Sean and Howard, this is Brian again. Okay, I appreciate all this, but I do want to make sure that, you know, this meeting cannot go on all night. We have to make sure that we take public comment. Okay, we just sort of really need to be focused on that, and we really want to make sure we capture the CAC's preference on the 3 of these things, because we've got a lot of participants tonight, and we want to make sure that everybody gets their 3 minutes. We just want to be mindful of that. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty much done right now, and I can take any questions. There's 3 options in front of you, and I'll just do one last summary. Option 1 is with the flood wall behind the sidewalk as you see it. And then options 2 and 3 are actually with the flood wall shifted over into the middle, about 3.5 feet away from the face of curb into the parking area as you would have it. And really everything in between the flood wall and the guardrail that you see on the left in all 3, the clear guardrail, that we can determine later. Really the important thing I need to know for the county is, where do we want this flood wall if we have to have it?
Great. So then, Sean, Kelly, just excuse me for a second if I jump in. So do we have any questions about what Sean has presented from members of the CAC? Otherwise, let's go to public comment and then take some comments.
Can I just make one point? I just wanted to point out that I'm thrilled that all these designs are really highlighting the redwood grove, which I think for so many years has been hidden. And I think that's the beauty of the temporary plaza, that's been sort of an uncovered gem. So I just love that fact. I know we're focusing on the right side, but I just wanted to acknowledge that. So anyway.
I have one question, Brian, I have one question, Jason here. So Sean, just to clarify, between the wall that's along the road and the see-through guardrail, what's rendered there, we can change that, to your point, to park benches, whatever that is later.
Yes, we can work on that more. Yes.
Okay.
And Sean, I would emphasize, and Howard, if I read what you're saying correctly, in option 2, if you take it in all 3 of these, it seems to me that the bench is an impediment. It's really a regimentation of how people have to behave. They have to sit and they have to be side by side and they have to be at attention, as opposed to the way the plaza works now, where it's just kind of carefree. And Sean, you've mentioned a couple of times picnic tables, and I think the way people are using the plaza now is it's conducive to tables and chairs as opposed to benches. And Howard, if I'm questioning you, that the one step block wall, are you saying that that could be moved out to the street where the stone wall is now, and it would serve essentially the same purpose?
Indeed.
Yeah,
In fact, there's
I
another
agree with
image.
Yeah,
Sean,
I would vote
there's,
to lead the
sorry.
jury. I'd vote for number 2.
All right,
Sean, if you could show an earlier image where the wall becomes a bench, it's more of a sculptural element, a number of platforms. Not there, it's beginning to show what I'm referring to. And Rich, the further out you move the wall, the more open the ends are where you have the floodgates. So that's more accommodating to the plaza.
Yeah.
all right, thank you, Howard and Rich. I would like to go back and just re-emphasize Kelly's point about the redwoods. You know, just how important they are. You see so many people enjoying the view. They're an integral part of this. So why don't we bring the questions to close from the CAC? Turn it over to public comment from the public, limited to 3 minutes, and then we'll bring it back here for a focused discussion so we can make a recommendation on these 3 designs to council.
So with
Who's
that,
running the deck, Dave?
Dimitri's going to run it. So everybody in the attendee list, you're welcome to raise your hands. And Dimitri will unmute you one at a time. Thanks so much.
All right, so we'll just go in order. First person, Amy Flynn. You can now unmute yourself, Amy.
Hi, these are super exciting, and I just want to congratulate Brian for being reelected. I'm super excited about that. And all your hard work. This is really awesome. I definitely think that one of the options with the wall out toward the road is the most aesthetically pleasing for everybody involved. And I second Kelly's super enthusiasm about the redwoods being visible, enjoyable. I've lived here for 30 years. I seriously practically never noticed those streets before. So I'm really excited about this. You guys are all doing an awesome job. We're really happy to have you all spending so much time on this, and super exciting.
Thanks a lot, Amy. Thanks for joining and your kind words about the project and myself, but especially about the project.
All right, thank you, Amy. Next person is GGP. You can now unmute yourself, GGP.
Thank you. Yes, Carol Page. I agree the redwoods are a definite asset. One thing I noticed was they appear to be very close to the bridge. And if you move the bridge toward the building, do you affect the redwoods? That is a question. Another question is, wherever you have flood walls, they need footings. And I see in this option 2, the footings will be going out. Well, they either have to go to the street or the sidewalk. And I wonder just how many trees you can have next to the flood wall. That has been a constant question in every project.
So
if you move the flood wall to the street, it is good that you have larger openings for visually for access and for the viewing, but it means your gates also have to be larger, so that in a flood event, you are talking about moving larger gates. You also have all of the furniture. If you use picnic tables and benches, everything has to be moved. On the other hand, I definitely agree that a stationary bench is a regimentation and not as friendly and welcoming to public use as movable furniture. So those would be my comments and questions. Thank you.
Kelly or Brian, I could address a couple of those if that's okay.
Yes,
Yeah, that'd be great. Go ahead, Sean.
So the redwood trees that you see on the left, that's a very good comment, but actually those don't exist now. And those would be planted in a dead zone based upon the retaining wall, which would create an area for trees to be planted. And then regarding the gate size, yeah, you're probably could be up to like an 8-foot gate or so. But typically what you do is you put a stanchion in the middle and split the gates up. And that's what we have like at town hall. So that's a very simple fix. And then for the flood wall with footings, you're absolutely correct. But as you see, the trees are on one side. You could design a retaining wall so that the footing goes either direction, either can have a heel or a toe. And so that's easy to address. You could also make it a lot deeper. So those are not, all those issues could be worked around with engineering.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, and then next, Ann Politzer. Ann, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, you guys for all your work on this project. I see this is all about the flood wall. I had thought, just from reading Dave's town newsletter, that this would be on the general design of the park. Are you going to present a finished or close to finished overall version of the park design for the public to see? And when can we do input on that?
Yeah, this is Brian. Well, one, this is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, pretty close to being input, as I sort of laid out at the beginning. Council sort of laid out the broad contours back last spring at the conclusion of the contest, to which the public had a full opportunity to weigh in after weighing in through Reimagine Creek Park. And also, this will be coming to council, so there'll be obviously open time during that for the public to weigh in.
What'll be the gap between that and the vote on the project?
That's to be determined.
Okay. Also another question. Because I think we need, I think we need more public input on this. I still can't see from, the current designs. Are you retaining the opening to Sir Francis Drake in the finished park design?
So I can just, we're not touching any of that over there right now. I mean, this is more right now the bridge and the plaza. And then as far as like this is a concept design still, so we still have to go through final architectural and structural with both RHAA and the bridge engineer.
Okay. So we'll get,
Sean,
we'll be able to weigh in after that's done, right?
I believe so.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Sean, if I could just clarify, am I correct in this design is just addressing the creek zone? In other words, the area that the county is responsible for?
No, Howard, it is not. It is including the zone that the county and any potential funds that we might raise.
No, I follow that, but to answer Ann, this particular part of the project, as I understand it, if you could clarify this, Sean and Brian, does not address the park. It just addresses the stream channel, which is under the purview of the county. Is that correct?
So, well, it addresses, as Brian said, it's addressing the plaza and,
yes,
and the bridge and the creek. So yes, it's addressing that area, but like other things within like the deck, or if there's other improvements, it's not really shown on this. That's correct.
That's what I understood.
Okay, can you guys still hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that there is ample time for the public to view what is close to finish and be able to take input, because that was part of the RHHA pitch.
I think I'm not sure, and there has been ample time throughout this project for the public, and there will continue to be at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, next we have Jeff Crute. Jeff, you can now unmute yourself. Jeff.
Yeah, hi. I guess I don't know what to say. I look at all three schemes and they really look like just variations on each other. I mean, they're all attractive, and the trees and the stone walls and so forth. But as someone who's lived here a long time and have been through two of the floods, it's hard for me to imagine that the floodwater isn't going to just come roaring right down San Anselmo Avenue as it has before. I don't know what model it was, but the waters were like 2 or 3 feet deep, and it's hard to imagine it's going to just stay into the creek. I guess underneath it all, the thing I'm really concerned about is what's there right now is actually really being used by the community. I think the idea of closing the avenue, which I think was Brian's on, may have been Brian's, but anyhow, on Friday and Saturday has been very successful for the community. People are out there, there's music playing. It's hard to see where doing something that will be needed once every 25 years, why something should be destroyed for that reason. So I'm very concerned that what was left of the bridge is coming out. I think a lot of people will be shocked. I know that you may have noticed these meetings and all that, but this is the first one that I'm aware of. And I would hope, I know you probably have some reason, but the other things, of course, with flooding is if you do speed it up, the water is going to hit Kentfield and Ross and parts of San Anselmo a lot harder. And I'm not sure where that small excavation that's being done at the foot of White Hill is going to make any difference whatsoever. So I'd love to see something that was of this fine aesthetics, but by keeping the bridge. And I know at one of those meetings I went to, there was a young woman who was an engineer with the county, and that this same point was brought up, that the town flooded 2 or 3 or more feet deep every 25 years. And what difference does it make if this thing comes out? And her opinion was that in 1962, water hit the bridge and it directed it out in San Anselmo Avenue. There was nothing about whether or not it caused damage. It was 58 years ago. I just think the price is way too high to the community.
So
Sean,
that's my point.
Sean, you want to address that?
yeah, so Jeff, I hear you loud and clear. I will say one thing on the flood wall. I mean, staff would agree with you that with just this flood wall, you probably are going to get water on the avenue from an engineering perspective. But building Bridge 2, when it was constructed in the 40s, the building that was there was condemned a year after by the town council because it created flooding. And that building is, a couple of feet lower than anything else and causes about.
Hey, Sean, I just want to for 1 second before you go.
Yeah.
Before you continue, I'm going to level set on what this project is. This project is tying onto the flood project. So to the extent that people have questions about the efficacy of the flood project, I'm not sure this is the proper venue, right? There's a flood committee and there's a board of supervisors. So the floor is obviously yours, and obviously feel free to see as fit as you would like. But let's just make sure that the Reimagine Creek Park, which is an adjunct to the flood committee, that's what we focus on.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And actually, I was going to make that point that with or without us, the flood control project is moving forward. And so if we don't seize this opportunity, Reimagining Creek Park, we're going to be left with something that is a flood control project and not a park, and not something that looks at the right of way from a public perspective in terms of being in our downtown corridor, a park, our sidewalks, how it impacts our businesses. And all along, I've been trying to juggle all these needs as a public works director, trying to make sure that this isn't just a flood control project. And because if we don't seize this opportunity, it's going to end up being a flood wall on the creek without a bridge, and it's going to be pretty ugly. And we're not going to end up with something that we can be proud of at the end of the day and use as a public space. So yes.
So do I understand this correct, that the town has absolutely no control over this part of its downtown?
So
is that what I'm hearing?
Well, what you're hearing is
that seems a little
whoever owns that building, Jeff, right? Whoever owns it has a right to tear it down, and it's already been vetted through an environmental impact report. And they could tear out that foundation and put a retaining wall in and call it a day. And so if we don't work with them, we're not going to get something that could actually, just like I don't think originally you were for the park that's there now with the building down, and I see you enjoying it and others enjoying it all the time. This could be something just as nice if we work with the county and all the different parties. We can get a really nice project.
Yeah, well, I definitely was not for demolishing the buildings because it put a lot of people out of business. And I wasn't alone. It was a large proportion of the merchants.
Well, thanks
But
for your comments, but we had a lot of public comment on this beforehand where people could weigh in, and we were pretty clear about what was going on during all the various meetings and during council.
You know, it is important to allow the community to have the input at any point, Brian.
It certainly is, which is why we should probably see if there's additional public comment, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
All right, anyone else, if you want to comment, please raise your hands. And I have one more. John Crane, you can now unmute yourself. John.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Brian, your comments are interesting because isn't this intertwined with flood benefit? That's one question. Who's paying for this part of the project? Is this a county project that's being paid for through our flood fee funds, or is this financed by the town of San Anselmo? Secondly, I've become aware of the fact that there's been a pretty significant modification to the removal of Bridge Building 2, which is a partial removal of the foundation versus a complete one. And I was told that that was because of the requests that have been made by the town council of San Anselmo. My question is, the town council aware that only one abutment is going to be removed now instead of both? And there is a flood benefit that needs to be considered for the removal of BB2, Bridge Building 2. So which option offers the most benefit? This got initiated because of flood control. So which one is going to serve us best? And how far downstream does it extend? Is the water back in San Anselmo at, say, coffee roasters downstream? Thank you. I know you don't want to address flood issues, but this was started because of flood issues.
So
Thank you.
I can just respond that the county is paying for the flood wall, the guardrail, and actually a number of, they have about $750,000 to $1 million in theory for improvements. So they're paying for many things, but a lot of the other things we're going to have to work with, getting donors to contribute. And there are a couple potential donors that are, looks like ready and willing to help with this project. One donor has already paid for much of the design that we have now and the environmental impact and bridge design. One abutment versus two, or one retaining wall versus two. Well, one of the reasons why you can't take out the retaining wall on the San Anselmo Avenue side is because the street would then fall into the creek. And that was an issue way back when. And so, this doesn't impact the flooding by leaving that wall in. They're able to achieve what they need to. And I think there was a third question, but I don't remember what it was. So I know Brian doesn't want to get to our
The third question was, how much benefit is there in terms of flood control, and which option offers the most benefit? Because the essence of this whole thing was flood control.
So but the option with or without the abutment, they both address the flood control that needed to be addressed. They both get us to a 100-year flood level event. So.
And I'll just step in. So we've been especially mindful that the funds that have been paid by taxpayers are being repurposed and used only to the extent like allowable under the terms of the grant. And anything beyond that area, as we've consistently discussed, we will be raising private funds from the community for.
And how much money do you expect you have to raise to complete the project?
Well, the project came in between, to do the whole park was between $4 and $6 million. COVID-19 has reduced all kinds of fundraising. So, right now we're looking at a smaller project. So it's certainly not going to be 4 to 6. And we're certainly looking at these three designs. We've already had an anonymous contribution to sort of provide these rendering drawings. So at this point, if anyone's ever done any sort of fundraising on this scale, these conversations are always delicate. But I'm highly confident right now that the number that might be needed for this as we move along, I'm comfortable that the community can raise right now.
Well, good. That's good to hear because the status of the fundraising is critical to moving forward. So thank you for your answers, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Are there any other questions, Dimitri?
Dimitri?
Sorry, yeah. Next one is Pat. Pat, you can unmute yourself.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. This is Pat Townsley. I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce Board, but I'm on here behalf tonight as the owner of Creekside Pizza located at 638 San Anselmo Avenue. And I've been here in town 20 years and seen quite a few floods. December 2016, we had a near flood level event here. The water flooding that actually hit the street in December of 2016 came up through the storm drains from bridge building number 2, the water coming down, slamming into bridge building number 2, and then, for lack of a better term, hydrostatic pressure pushes water back upstream into the 2 storm drains that are located between what is called Creek Place, where Creekside Pizza and all the other restaurants and businesses here are housed. And the water slams up into there and then percolates up through the storm drains at the coffee roastery, and then you can see it to the space where George and Willow was. The water comes up there, so it doesn't jump the creek there. By removing bridge building number 2, you're removing what looks like underneath that building, if you've been under there, is kind of a fish ladder where I assume that the gas tanks were from the previous gas station that was there back in the day. And thereby removing all that, leaving the abutment, if you will, on the San Anselmo Avenue side. I understand that. I was kind of thinking also that it was going to get pushed back and a new one was going to get put in. But we're widening the creek there and therefore allowing more cubic inches of water to flow at any given time downstream. And that is by itself going to reduce the base flood level. From what we're measuring now, the base flood level is going to drop down. So the need for a flood wall is kind of absurd at that point. If we're already lowering the base flood level, this flood wall, I get it, it's a state project or a county project, but it's absurd to try and hold water back with this thing at 3 or 6 feet or however high this 4 feet. You can see the fence next to Creekside right now is at 4 feet high. The property making this wedge of the bridge is owned by the building owner here. So let me jump back. If you're standing at Michael Feldman's building and you're looking at this bridge building number 2 being removed completely, the aesthetic looking towards Creekside, the wall, which is Creekside, which some of the artist renderings, not the winning finalist, had, of putting a mosaic picture on the wall there, it's going to look like a giant drive-in movie theater. So having that bridge there is super important from a transit, from the hub parking lot, or I should say the transit terminal coming to the crosswalks here. But from an aesthetic, having that bridge at an angle away from what is the Creekside building at 632, rather than slammed up, if you will, next to it, parallel. It doesn't change the EIR. It doesn't change how much sunlight hits on that space of the bridge coverage. Moving it over, shifting it over, working with the owners of that property that have that small V shape from where the proposed bridge is up against there to either work together as that property becomes town property or it has an easement given to you by the owner of the property. And that's a conversation you'll need to have with them. Looking from Michael Feldman's art studio towards Creekside, you really need that return as an aesthetic so you're not looking under the building. And it was also allow, from a personal standpoint, from a business standpoint, if that bridge was at the right height and at the right angle, and let's call it perpendicular, maybe an inch or 2 away from Creekside, we could actually open up a 15-foot opening from the side of Creekside on San Anselmo Avenue, continue the Creekside awning around, breaking up the side of that building, which is, again, going to look like the old drive-in theater in San Rafael. We can break that up and really have a nice aesthetic. And, you know, please, for God's sake, don't touch the redwoods. Love all the trees, but the flood wall in itself is, and let me ask you this. I'll leave this as a rhetoric question, and thank you for your time tonight. if you put this flood wall up, and it does have a 100-year flood, and it's a 3-foot high flood wall, all that water is going to go where? You slam a flood wall from Michael Feldman's art studio to the point of touching 638, or the building that I'm in right now, which I am renting for the next 15 years, hopefully, which belongs to my landlords. Where's that water going to go? It's going to go into this building, creating yet another liability and more litigation if you guys are forcing water. And I'm not saying it's you guys, but that's the baseline project problem is, where's that water going to go? It's going to go directly into this building, which is already ground zero for flooding. It floods from underneath.
We're getting to 3 minutes here.
All right, well, that's it. This building and this entire bridge that we are on, and Bon Tai and Sushi 69, the water comes up from underneath this building. Floodgates on this building actually hold the water in our building. I love where this is going. I would love to see the bridge up against Creekside. I think the bridge is super important aesthetically as well as for pedestrian use. I'm all for this, and I look forward to seeing where this goes from here. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and we have one more, or do you want to address any of this? Or
I'll just say that, whether or not we need a flood wall is more a question for the county, and leave it at that. I do agree with some of the comments. So
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Pat. Any more public comment, Dimitri?
Yes, I have Fran Farmer. Fran, you can now unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking my call, and thank you for the presentation tonight. So I have a couple of questions. Wanted to tag on to the question about cost and where those funds would be coming from, which I realize it sounds like at the moment, in terms of the bigger picture of the project, it's a little bit unknown. Sounds like we're hoping to get donations, but we don't have a committed amount of those donations. And along with costs, I'm wondering about, once the project is complete, has the town determined a maintenance cost over the long term for this project, and how that would be paid for by the town? And then the second thing I would just like to say is, when I went back and did a little research on this project, I saw a Zoom meeting where the town council, where the plans were being presented. And that was almost a year and a half ago, and I haven't seen any additional engagement with the residents. And I think it's, especially in a town our size, it's really important to have the community input. So with a big gap, I think people might want to get re-engaged to this project, and hearing everybody's input. I think the last speaker, I'm sorry, I missed his name, had some really interesting comments, especially with his experience with his business and everything. But I think it's important to hear everybody's input. And I just have to say, cutting anyone off like Jeff Crute actually got cut off in his comments. And I don't think that that's actually the way that we want to engage with our community for this town. Thank you.
Yeah, Sean, want me to take the question on costs?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take the question on costs. So the question on donations, we've been pretty consistent, as I alluded to before. When you do these kind of projects, right, no one's going to write a check until the project is actually ready to go. So if you've dealt in Marin County, right, there's multiple layers of approvals that have to be gone through, either through the supervisors, as ultimately it happens in January, and through the town. So what's been going on, and we've been pretty consistent, is we've been cultivating and in conversation with a group of donors who've been following this. One of the donors had enough confidence and was early enough in the investor to make an early investment in this project. As part of the fundraising, we are looking to fund dedicated maintenance funds for this project. So that's how we are addressing it. The other thing that what this process has allowed us to do is be sort of nimble and responsive, i.e., What we thought before may or may not have been feasible, i.e. to raise between 4 and 6 to do the entire park. You know, COVID-19, like so many things, the economic challenges doesn't make that viable. One of the reasons why we are, you know, scaling back the vision, but at the same time, COVID-19 allowed us to actually employ a proof of concept. So donor excitement remains strong based upon the actual proof of concept.
All right, and then the last call for any other public comments. Please raise your hand if you'd like to comment. Thank you. Fran again, let's see, real quick.
Sorry, I had muted myself. So I'd just like to clarify. So if the project has X amount of funds raised and the project begins, but then we run out of funds to complete the project. So if it's a $6 million project and only 4 million are raised, what is the plan B to get those extra funds? And then in terms of that maintenance, is that something that will be coming out of the general fund, or is that going to be an additional tax onto the residents?
Well, I guess the first thing I said is the maintenance is, well, one, the park is clearly being maintained out of general funds already. But in terms of, there's never been any partial tax ever associated with this project at all. And the maintenance fund is contemplated to be raised along with the capital funds privately, a dedicated maintenance fund for this. So that's the question of the maintenance fund. The first question you asked of is, again, we've been fairly consistent on this, is that ultimately the project that will be built will be dictated by the funds that are raised. So we have no intent, there would never be anything where we'd be like, well, we're going to try and build a $6 million project out of $2 million. One, I don't suspect that any sophisticated participant would engage in that. What we ultimately will do is, once this project has met all the necessary approvals through the town, through planning, and through the Board of Supervisors, we'll know exactly what the design of this project is. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, this project is due to be slated to go to the Board of Supervisors in January. This will then give us an ample amount of time to, secure, real dollars from the donor interest. And then we can, build out the county portion and then the community portion at the same time, resulting in cost efficiencies and time efficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Your friend.
Excuse me, if I could just add on to what Brian said. This is Howard. The park design, the overall development of the park outside of the stream channel, which is being funded by the county as we understand it, but the park itself can be staged and phased according to the funds that are at hand at the time. So the ultimate development of the park will be, I assume, Brian, if this is correct, according to the funds that are raised. So it doesn't have to be the full Monty at one time. The design can be developed in stages. Even though our preference would be all at one time, but if the funds aren't there, all the funds aren't there, it can be phased.
That's correct.
I'm not seeing any more raised hands for public comment.
So with that, could I get maybe the committee to comment about, sounds like I got some direction, and it sounds like everybody's saying they'd like the more plaza space with the flood wall.
So Sean, just Brian, sorry to interject before we go bring it back here for a focused deliberation and recommendation to council on the bit. So I just want to tie it back to something that you said earlier, Sean, which is the following, right? Ultimately, this is a community-driven project. So if the community, which is, I keep saying the same thing, but it's sort of simple. If the community enjoys the space and finds that a downtown gathering space, that's what they want, and they want something that's beautiful and gorgeous, then they should go out and help raise money for the funds. Otherwise, the vision won't be true. it's community driven in every single way. So I will pause with that and then bring it up here, bring it back here so we can provide a focused conversation and guidance to Sean.
Thank you.
Brian, could I just ask a question about getting back to the money part? I think what's been missed in some of the comments from the public is that the county, the flood control district, is going to build something regardless, right? And what we're trying to do here is come up with a better design to leverage that will be of true benefit to the town. But if we do nothing, and if nothing happens between now and sometime in January, I guess, because the Board of Supervisors is supposed to decide in January, am I right that the county, the flood control district will just go ahead and build something very minimal, right? So the idea here is really to approve a design that can attract funders privately, right? And that's another point that's missed. There's no public money from the town of San Anselmo being sought here, either for the construction or for the maintenance. And so I think we're kind of missing that point. So I just wanted to confirm that if nothing happens by mid-January, the flood control district, the county will go ahead and just build whatever it needs to build for flood control.
You're absolutely right, John. Thank you for underscoring that.
Right. So the second point I wanted to make is this is not really the place to relitigate the issues about whether the flood control plan is the right plan, because this is not the venue that was stated earlier. But a couple of public comments seem to come back to, and I'll call out Jeff Crute particularly in that regard, to kind of question the very premise of the project, that it even makes sense to remove the concrete abutments from the creek. I think that's totally irresponsible given the years of time and that's already been decided. The county has bought the building. I think that is interjecting, I think, a totally irresponsible level of confusion and concern about something that's already been decided. The decision is really not whether flood control is going to happen. It's whether it happens at a very minimal level with very little aesthetic benefit to the town, or whether it happens in a way that can leverage public interest in having a fantastic public space, which we've seen already what it can be. Now we see from the design that it's not going to be exactly like it looks today, right? Because today we have this plaza. That plaza is sitting on concrete abutments that are blocking the creek, and those are going to go away, right? So we're trying to, this has been one of my concerns. What we have there now is so nice that I don't think a lot of people realize that that's going to be taken away. And so I think the idea here is we need to have a vision for something equally good or better, but to do that, it requires a bit of a leap of faith, but not at the expense of the town. We're not talking about town money. We're talking about money that would come privately to leverage money from the county and the flood zone district that's already going there. So I think we're missing a lot of those points. At least some of the public comments did. And so I want to encourage that we move forward with what's on the table right now, so we can get to that point of attracting the private money. The private donors need certainty. The private donors are not going to put in money if there's some question about what's going to be done. And if we blow that, we're blowing a huge opportunity right now to make a real difference to the future of San Anselmo. And if we don't do this, we'll be very unhappy, I predict later, that we missed this opportunity to do something that doesn't cost the town any money and vastly improves the downtown.
And John, I just want to add to that it's been 18 months ago when we started having these public meetings about this. And it's nice that we have Zoom now so people are able to attend, but nobody attended our public meetings, which were noticed every single time by Dave Donnery in the town newsletter.
Right.
And, we did our best to get the word out, but there wasn't, we had some people attend. We definitely had regular people, but we did a lot of work and monthly meetings, for quite a while to come to this spot. So this hasn't kind of just come up out of the blue.
Exactly.
But we do have some urgency because the county is going to move no matter what.
I think that's the key point, and I just want to warn against the tendency or the temptation for people that have not been engaged to come in at the last minute and try to blow this up. I think that would be a terrible tragedy. I just think it would be a bad idea. I think we just need to call that out, and I will particularly point out Jeff Crute, former councilman, who's trying to blow this up, and I find that absolutely. I just think it's typical of the approach to want to stop positive things from happening. So I just think we need to reject it.
And can I also encourage everybody, we do have a website, which has been up for 18 months, and it's reimaginecreekpark.com. And it has a lot of Q&A on there. We spent a lot of time putting it on there. It talks about the contests that we did. So if you want a historical view of kind of what we did, everything is there. We're now going to be doing some more updates on it with these new revised plans. But I just want you to be aware that we've had that, and you have an opportunity to give us your email. We'll make sure that you're in the loop in terms of further communication. So we are really trying. And, you know, I think this CAC has worked hard. I think town council worked hard. So I just want to reiterate that this isn't something that's just come up overnight. It's been really a long process. So anyway, thank you. That's just my 2 cents.
Great. So we brought it back up. We brought it back up here for Reimagine Creek Park deliberation. Let's go with it. Thank you. We need to provide guidance for to Sean and myself, the other liaison, John, for 1 to 3, from 1 to 3.
Is it really just 1 or 2-3? I'm just
I think that's really, and really, you know, ultimately, you know, the decision, as with the original, was stays with council. So can we just take, Kelly, you want to run a straw poll and get people's quick feelings on what this is? This meeting's going on for a little bit. I always want to be respectful and mindful of people's time.
Because we're going to give, this will be our recommendation to town
Yeah,
council.
this will be our recommendation to town council.
Okay, so for the members on here, I guess I'd like to know who feels option 1 is the best option. Anybody? I can't see everybody on my screen.
Well, if I can respond,
Okay.
I'm not choosing any of the options. I think the sentiment should be, we want the largest piazza, commons that we can have, which suggests that the wall should be moved, so-called wall should be moved towards the street to the greatest extent possible, and that the wall is not, in its final form, not a wall per se, but a design element that consists of benches, planters, and other features, so that the people can use the so-called wall for other things other than just a flood containment element. And the further out towards the street we go, as was said, the lower the so-called barrier or wall becomes, so that people can see into the plaza and the redwoods beyond. And so I don't think that is portrayed, frankly, in any of the 3 options, but that would be my preference.
Howard, it actually is portrayed. 2 and 3 are basically that option, pushing the wall.
Okay.
All right.
But,
thank you. Go ahead,
but
Howard.
I would just add that the wall that's shown in 2 and 3 is more of a wall and a linear, a bench. And I would strongly urge that it become more of what was shown in some of the other images, more of a sculptural form that takes the onus off of being a vertical barrier, if you follow that, Sean.
Yes, completely. Thank you.
So I think it's all there, but it just calls for an iteration that combines what I said as one of the options, or an amendment to option 2 or 3, if I may.
Thank you, Howard.
Anyone else? Okay, so is everybody else of the same ilk as Howard, that the outside wall, the wall that in 2 and 3, I think that's what we're talking more about, is where the wall is, right?
Kelly, I vote
Indeed.
3. Or
2.
3. I'll go with
2 or
2.
3. Okay,
I would go 2 or 3
okay.
with Howard's recommendation.
I have to agree with that.
And I don't mind a short email that summarizes what I just said, which perhaps is not as coherent as some words would be, that can be conveyed to the town council on our behalf. But it would go to you, Kelly, and you can wordsmith it as you do very well.
And I completely understand too, Howard. Thank you.
Did John Nelson weigh in?
Option 2, I would prefer. And I also want to thank Pat Townsley for his comments with respect to looking at things from that vantage point as well, as appreciated. So thanks, Pat.
So, Madam Chair and Sean, do you feel you've captured the impression and the sentiment and can effectively convey them to town council?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's time and all the public comment. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, Kelly, do you want to bring it? You want to bring us home and close the
Yeah.
meeting? Thanks, everybody.
I really appreciate everybody's comments. I appreciate people coming to the meeting. So watch for other public meetings, because that's we need to have people engaged. So I think that's a great thing. So anyway, I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night.
brother.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.